Hey, welcome back. I'm Keith Barry.
I'm Gabe Shanhar.
And I'm Mike Monticello.
And today we are going to be talking about a redesigned vehicle, the 2024 Hyundai Kona. It's a small SUV. It was a popular small SUV when it came out a couple of years ago, but now it's got a totally new look. It's got this kind of Geordie LaForge thing going on in the front. It's about a half a foot longer. Hyundai says there's more legroom, more cargo space. We rented two of them from Hyundai, which we drove, and they were a 1.6-liter turbo with an 8-speed automatic and a 2-liter naturally aspirated with a CVT. You can add all-wheel drive to either one. Gabe, tell us, how do these vehicles fit in? They're gas only in an increasingly electrifying lineup. They're small SUVs in a really popular segment. What changed?
These are small SUVs or subcompact SUVs. Some people call this category is a really emerging category that a few years ago barely existed, and now there are a bunch of entries there.
It started with a Crosstrek, right?
The Subaru Crosstrek still star of this category. And the Kona kind of slides in between the Venue and the Tucson. The Tucson a couple of years ago, after the redesign, grew a little, became grander and more expensive, and now it's the Kona's turn to grow up a little bit, and it does. I think the car feels more refined. I mean, it rides better. It is quieter. It's indeed roomier. And it just feels like a more grown-up-y kind of a mature car that, and also the price. I mean, it's not $23,000 anymore. The price ranges from $24,000 to $33,000.
Yeah, of course.
So it's took quite a leap. So it, and also, I mean, the trend in this category. I mean, these used to be based on subcompact cars. The best example is the Honda HR-V, which used to be based on a Honda Fit. Now it's based on a Honda Civic. So manufacturers pay attention to this class, and with the trend of customers leaving sedans, a lot of people are going to look at these kind of vehicles instead of sedans.
Yeah, I was going to say there aren't really subcompact sedans to base them on anymore these days.
Or even, I mean, these can be even an alternative to a midsize sedan price-wise.
Absolutely. So of the two we rented, now you both driven them both.
Yeah.
Now I would assume, looking at the spec sheets, that the 1.6 turbo with the 8-speed, that's going to be the more fun one to drive. That's the one to get. Now we haven't done any instrumented tests on these. We're going to buy them when they come out. They're not out yet, but we drove two versions from Hyundai that we rented. Monty, which one did you like best? I think the 1.6 is 190 horsepower and the 2-liter is 147, right?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, and it's interesting because both powertrains see a change for 2024, which is the 2-liter has gone from a 6-speed automatic to a continuously variable transmission, and the 1.6 turbo has gone from a 7-speed dual clutch transmission to a conventional 8-speed automatic. And I think in both cases, they've been improved because of those switches. And like you said, Keith, you would think that we'd gravitate toward the 1.6 turbo. It's got more power, and usually turbos are a little bit more fun to drive. But honestly, I think for more people...
And quieter.
Yeah, and quieter. They usually, there's some muffling going on with the turbo. And so I think for most people, the 2-liter, believe it or not, is actually going to work better because there's some low-speed hiccups. Even though it doesn't have the dual clutch transmission anymore, there's some hesitation with the 1.6 turbo. And, there's some, I think, turbo lag when you get going from a stop or a rolling stop. But then even when you're doing things like you're slowing down to turn onto another road and you go to get back on the power, there's big delays there, right? And it's kind of annoying. I like the power, right? When it's working, when you've gotten going, it shifts really nicely. It's got decent passing power and all that. But with the 2-liter, you don't have any of that kind of hiccups. It takes off from the line normally without a hesitation. Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of power, but you don't have that hesitancy when you're, say, slowing down to turn onto another road. You don't have any of that stuff. That said, it's nowhere near as cultured as the other one, as the turbo. Also, I want to say that CVT is tuned really nicely. So we like CVTs that do the simulated upshifts to keep the rubber banding that CVTs tend to do to a minimum.
I think most people aren't going to realize it's the CVT because it behaves quite well, and it kind of changes its tune with your foot on the throttle and the terrain and whatnot. One thing about the dual clutch, though, it's an interesting fact here that Hyundai learned their lesson about dual clutch transmissions the hard way. And so at least for the American market, they are shying away from dual clutch transmission and replaced this way in the Kona with a regular 8-speed automatic. And the dual clutch has its own quirks. It has all these hesitations. The clutches have to figure themselves out, and stop and go traffic. It becomes a little unpleasant and unpredictable. And in our reliability surveys, every Hyundai Kia car that had or has dual clutch transmission totally suffered in reliability.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you talked about that hesitation, that I was hoping when I saw, it's got a conventional automatic, some of that's going to go away, but it sounds like that's not necessarily the case.
It's not as bad as before,
right.
And more than anything, it's you don't have that kind of dual clutch clunkiness where it's trying to decide. Sometimes at low speeds they are very confused as to what gear to be in the dual clutches. This one's better, but you still have that turbo lag and just this weird, some confusion or just hesitancy when you're getting back on the power. And, it's a bummer about the dual clutches because they typically, there's two reasons why I usually want to use them. One, they're pretty efficient. They're usually more efficient than a regular automatic. Yeah. Also, you have the ability to have them shift really quickly when you're out there, when you're up to normal speeds. And so you lose a little bit of that. But I think in the end, it's a better combo the way they have it now.
For sure.
Yeah. Something that I really like about it is some of this design that they brought through. Hyundai's new design language. It's clear you look at something like the Ioniq 5, the Ioniq 6, they're adding bright colors. It isn't just going to be gray cars anymore, especially in this segment where, people are concerned about resale value and about, returning a lease, and nobody wants to order anything that rocks the boat. But, you can get like Kermit the Frog green on this thing. And I also love the fact that blind spot warning standard and a car that isn't affordable as it used to be, but it's still relatively affordable as it should be. And we think that should be standard across all vehicles. Gabe, I know you mentioned some of the competitors and the OG Crosstrek and the HR-V and all that, but we have so many more. We've got the Corolla Cross. I think does the Nero even fit in there? How does this stack up as this just gets more and more crowded? And these aren't luxury vehicles that the automakers can throw extras on to make money. These have to sell.
Yeah, and the Kona becomes a stronger competitor here. We'll know for sure once we buy our own and test it, but it has more upscale amenities and also it's the only one in the segment I think that offers a multitude of powertrains. There is also an sporty N, but also in terms of equipment, it has a monostable gear selector in some of the versions. It has for a first time power seat available. It has power rear gate. Has a nice instrument panel with a pretty elaborate screen matching other Hyundai models here. So it's a pretty high-tech car. And that also manifests itself in the price. You get a regular run-of-the-mill SEL with all-wheel drive, and you're at $28,000. So it's getting up there.
Yeah, every single trim comes with the big touchscreen, the 12.3-inch touchscreen infotainment system, and that was a big thing for them, is that they didn't want you to, quite often with the lower trims, you get this tiny little, infotainment screen
with a big plastic frame around it.
Yeah, so outdated. But every single one comes out. They don't all come with the same, instrument panel. But lower trims come with a smaller version. But they do all come with the same basic touchscreen.
Probably simplifies things for their parts department to order them in when they're building it too.
And it also looks a lot cooler in the showroom.
Yeah, it's got that kind of flat look like the Ioniqs. Yeah. Like, speaking of the Ioniqs, There's no plug-in, there's no hybrid version of this Kona, at least not in the US, but there will be an EV. It's front-wheel drive only. The range is going to be up to 261 miles on the extended range model, 200 miles from the SE. We're going to order one of those, right, Gabe? When that comes out?
Yeah, we're going to test the EV and a regular Kona as well.
Yeah, we haven't driven the electric one yet, but I think that's going to be very important. It's sort of an entry to EVs from an established brand. It's going to be relatively inexpensive, especially as smaller, less expensive EVs are. Their future is a little uncertain. They tend to be those more expensive, larger vehicles.
Yeah, I think Hyundai and Kia are going to be the only game in town in terms of the affordable EVs, because the Chevy Bolt is going away.
It's coming back.
But as a redesign.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a bit of a hiatus between the end of this generation Bolt and the next generation. So for the immediate future, there's going to be a bit of a void there that Hyundai and Kia are positioned to fill.
And we liked the last version of, the last Kona electric, so we're bound to like this one as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to driving it. I hope we get the 261-mile version. I'd be more likely to spend a little more time in it, so a little plug for that for our car buying expert over here. But
yeah, I mean, we're ordinarily we almost always opt for the longer range in any EV.
So expect to see more on the Kona, the Hyundai Kona, the 2024 gas and electric versions when we purchase our own, which I believe we're trying to do as quickly as possible, as soon as they are available to us in the trims that we want, to test all the features that we want. But to read our initial thoughts, head over to cr.org and sign up for our newsletter, and you'll find out when we get the ones we purchase into test and all the instrumented tests and everything there. Which is exciting. We can follow it through all along. So now it's time for questions. You can send yours to talkingcars@icloud.com. That's what Justin from North Carolina did. And he asks us a question that has now got stuck in my head ever since he asked it. Maybe dangerously for someone who tends to like things a little bit organized. Does CR assess whether the driver's seat is aligned with the steering wheel as part of its testing program? I once owned a 2013 Ford Focus that had the seat offset from the steering wheel, and it took me a while to realize why I was having back pain on long trips. It seems like seat and steering wheel alignment would be a primary requirement of engineering a modern vehicle. I'm going to throw this one to you, Gabe, since you deal with most of the measurements and all that sort of stuff when new cars come in. Is this a thing?
So the specific thing that this is called driving position, and driving position is, of course, one of our 50 odd some tests and evaluations, and we have a team of 5 people that assess driving position, and they consist of short people and tall people, and so that kind of thing of an askewed steering wheel will get exposed in our testing. I mean, it may not be something that someone will pick up on after a 5-minute round the block the drive at the dealership, but after about half an hour of sitting in a car, you're going to feel that. I mean, I can tell you from my own experience. I mean, there were a few years where some Fords had a really kind of an odd driving position because the left footrest was too close and not on the same plane as the gas pedal. And after about half an hour behind the wheel, I mean, you'd feel it. And you'd feel all of a sudden like some lower back pain, and you'd realize that, I mean, this is not ideal.
It's interesting because I went and looked at some forums online, and I found people saying the same thing about some Hyundais, some Audis, some Hondas, and 90% of the responses would be, I never noticed that. I never noticed that. And it'd be one person who would be saying, well, the rest of my family doesn't notice, but I can tell. I know when I went out there with did a plumb line across the, it's off. I can tell. And I'm sure that it's just something, for some people, it might just be some quirks. I mean, it has to do with the packaging of the vehicle that that sometimes not everything is going to be perfect. And I think the idea is that the designers figure if it's a quarter of an inch this way or a tenth of a centimeter that way or whatever, that it's not going to be noticeable. But it seems like there's some people who really pick up on it.
Yeah, it's funny because we all have our own little, pet peeves as far as the driving position that bother us, right? Like for Gabe, you really like lumbar support.
Yeah, it's more
really
like a seat comfort.
Yeah, he really wants four-way lumbar support. He's not happy with just two-way.
Yeah.
And I want it on the passenger seat as well. Now,
That's very kind. He's thinking of others.
Yes.
Me, I get hung up on, and you know this, Keith, because I know you've made fun of me, the center console hemming in my right knee, which is weird because you would think, why would someone who's not that tall have issues with that? But maybe it's because I have to sit closer, actually, that it is a problem.
So when it tapers, your knees before the taper starts.
My knee, and so I get bothered when it's hems me in or when it's, just hard plastic and no padding. And the other thing that for some reason I get thrown off with is when the armrests are on different planes. What we want, and that's just something we look for in the driving position scoring is everything's symmetrical, right? So you don't want, one armrest down and one armrest up. And the other thing that bothers me is I must have delicate elbows or something, but if they don't have enough padding, that's something that I'm really going to score a vehicle worse for if the padding's really thin, or in some cases, like actually this Kona SE, just a plastic door armrest. No padding whatsoever on the door armrest because it's a lower trim.
I noticed on the EQE that just the place where I sat, the armrest here was where the lip was between the opening for the it just dug into my
very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Now I can hear my grandmother's voice when I was learning to drive saying, both hands on the wheel, don't rest your arm, you won't be prepared for an emergency. But sometimes you rest your arm on the, not everyone is at 9 and 3 all the time.
So ideally, I think you want, for me, the most comfortable position is both elbows on the armrest and then both hands on the wheel. And they're not going to be at 9 and 3. I don't think you need to be at 9 and 3 for every driving or just going down the highway. Actually, I took a stunt driving course years ago, Bobby Orr stunt driving. And he actually had us always have our hands low because of all the constant turning of the steering wheel that you needed to do. He'd get mad if he's like, I don't ever want to see your hands. And it's funny because I see people driving down the road and they're at not quite what I call the 12 and 12 position, but I see people like this. And first of all, that seems really uncomfortable.
Kind of hanging on for dear life.
That is actually a bad position to try to make a quick reaction for the car. You're much better off down here. And of course, you're best off at 9 and 3.
And also the airbag too, being
exactly.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hitting like I hit the microphone.
That is, but I'm surprised how many people I see going down the road like this. It's just
that's just a prescription for constant steering correction and a very unsmooth drive for your passengers.
Yeah. My problem with the steering wheel is that I find in a lot of cars, especially newer ones, that the steering wheel blocks the instrument panel when I put it in a place that's comfortable.
Yes.
And I got a little arthritis in my hands, from typing and whatever for years, and I can't have my hands kind of bent for the steering wheel to be tilted, so I like it to be sort of facing me a bit, and it blocks this. So it's kind of the old trains, planes, and automobiles. Do you know how fast you were going? I have no idea. I can't see. See the speedometer.
And it seems to be getting worse.
Yeah,
you say, Gabe, and I think it's because they're making these fancy, rectangular instrument panels, right? Because they look really neat, and they're throwing a whole lot of information in there. But then you're trying to look through something that's rectangular with something that's round. And we're not saying we want rectangular or square steering wheels, but even just
they've tried that.
Even just this Kona, for me, it when I have it in a comfortable position, it actually blocks the upper part of the instrument panel. So, and it's something that we've been seeing with a lot of Hyundai products, actually.
Most instrument panels these days are totally digital, so manufacturers can rejigger the graphics and present things in different places.
Yeah.
And one thing that really bugs me in the Solterra / Toyota BZ4X, the instrument panel is so far away. The font is so tiny. The steering wheel is here about 3 feet from the instrument panel, and the way I have my steering is exactly in the way of looking at the range.
Yeah. You figure on an iPhone or an Android phone, you can now switch the the menu from the top to the bottom, why wouldn't you be able, you have all these ways of customizing your screen. You should be able to kind of move them around like little widgets.
Yeah.
There's your free consulting idea for automakers.
Next week's show, we'll talk about visibility.
Yes.
To that point, actually, you can do it in some center screens. You can move icons like a Hyundai Kia. You can do that, and some other ones. Honda, there are 8 tiles, so you can move things that you use more frequently to be closer to you.
Yeah. Sounds nice. We're sort of literal growing pains here. But I mean, to answer Justin's question, I this is one of those things that unfortunately it just kind of is up to the individual whether that's something that bothers you or not. And I think about the idea that dead pedal and the footrest in the Ford. Unfortunately, that's something you're going to find out after some time with it.
If I could put in a plug for our online road tests. I mean, we have magazine road tests as well, but they're much, much shorter just because they have to fit in the magazine. If you look at our online road tests, if you're a member and have access to those, which we hope everyone is, we give very detailed information on everything, including driving position. So you could go there and look and read, oh, wow, they said that this doesn't work for taller people or this doesn't work for shorter people. And so, I mean, just a little plug for what we're doing here, that we're trying to help people out and give them as much information before they buy the car. Yeah,
we didn't spend a weekend in it. We spent 2,000, 3,000 miles in it before those are written up. So, give it a chance. Now, if the steering wheel is kind of this way and it's a used car, I would maybe go back to the dealership.
And you have a bigger problem.
you have a bigger problem. And if the steering wheel is never on center, that's an alignment issue. But it should be pretty much aligned with you. And we're going to align with your questions as you send them to us at talkingcars@icloud.com. But we hope we answered that one for you in our own way, Justin. And thanks so much for talking cars with us. We'll see you again soon.